When I'm 65 is made possible by the nonprofit Investor Protection Trust and the Investor Protection Institute, with contributions from the Alabama Securities Commission, the Iowa Insurance Division, the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, and the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities. Since 1993, the Investor Protection Trust has worked with the states to provide the objective investor education needed by all Americans to make informed investment decisions.
Do you think you'll ever be able to retire?
As of now, for me, no.
Being so young, it's very blurry at the moment.
It seems fairly far off for me as well. So I just figure I'll be working for quite a while.
Congratulations! With advancements in medical science and nutrition, life expectancy, particularly for young people, is going up considerably.
Which is a really good news, but not everything's great. There's always some negative, and that is that you have to fund retirement for a longer period of time.
The golden years, post-professional career, retirement, whatever you want to call it, we're all facing it. We're also living longer, well into our 80s and 90s. The golden years stretching into golden decades.
It's good news we're going to live longer, but then we have to recognize we either have to work more or save more and therefore reduce our standard of living.
The 65 retirement age for Social Security was put in place in 1933 when retirement lasted, 8 or 10 years, barely.
This idea that we think we can work from 22 to 62, which is 40 years, and then support ourselves for at least 20 years, which is the average, the arithmetic doesn't work.
We're not too far from a day where maybe every year that you live, you have to fund this year plus another year in the future.
And I think most people had this point of view, they'll just keep their fingers crossed and one day they'll wake up and they'll be healthy, wealthy, and wise.
It's not like you can just show up, at 65 and sort of figure, what am I going to do about this the next 30 years? You need to be figuring it out all along.
People aren't thinking about it at all. They're busy with their lives. They're focused on other things. And then on the other end of the spectrum are the people that just feel overwhelmed by it and don't know what to do.
Given the fact that we're saving for something that might be 40 years in the future, most of us have absolutely no idea of what to do for that.
We don't want to outlive our money. People have this palpable fear in their eyes about doing that.
No, don't spend it all in one place.
Things weren't always this complicated. Most of us remember our parents or grandparents waxing dreamily about their pension.
What are they doing, Grandpa?
They're in retirement. People did it when I was a boy.
But for 30 years, the idea of the pension has been just that, an idea. Instead, employers have offered up defined contribution plans, or the more familiar-sounding 401ks and IRAs.
I think the change from sort of the golden watch type pension to having people save for their own future has really just shifted a lot of the burden onto individuals and their families.
Since pensions are an increasingly endangered species, what we're left with is the DIY retirement, do it yourself, an economically secure retirement beginning and ending with the person in the mirror.
The analogy with the cars is jumping all these parts in your driveway, saying, here's a manual on how to assemble it, do it. And by the way, if it doesn't work, it's your problem.
And you can go wrong at each stage. You are responsible to join a plan or not, how much to contribute, which investments to make to grow your nest egg, how big of a nest egg you'll need, what to do with that nest egg when you move from job to job, and then finally, when you reach retirement, how much to withdraw each year so you can enjoy living on that money, and yet also not run out of it for as long as you continue to live. Is it any wonder that 21% of Americans think winning the lottery is their best chance at saving enough for retirement? In the old pension system, individuals didn't have to make any of these decisions. You were automatically enrolled, your company set the contribution rate, made the investment decisions, and at the end of your career, they didn't hand you $1 million. They provided you with a paycheck for the rest of your life. But things aren't quite so easy anymore. Whether you're ready to retire next year or 40 years from now, each generation faces unique retirement challenges.
Boomers grew up in a time of great prosperity. It made them very carefree financially, but it hasn't served them very well because they're not savers at all. They grew up in the era where it was easy to get a credit card, easy to go in debt, and easy to second mortgage your home. And so here's a generation with big aspirations for all the wonderful things they want to do in their retirement. But the truth of it is that many of us as boomers just can't afford it. The Gen X generation have been kind of taking notes, so they're a little more responsible when it comes to saving. And so they've also set a little bit more modest expectations for retirement. They don't necessarily assume that they're going to retire young and then, live for decades comfortably. They imagine they're going to have roommates or relocate to a less expensive part of the country. And then you've got the Millennials. They're watching their own baby boomer parents hit hardships financially. And so they're a little bit more cautious. And they lived through this, economic volatility of the last decade, and it wasn't quite as much of a whiplash as the Depression back in the 20th century, the 1930s, but it got people's attention.
Baby boomers saw their 401ks plummet courtesy of the 2008 crash, and now they have little time to catch up. The often cynical Gen Xers, they've seen so many market downturns that, true to their nature, they're skeptical of the whole darn system. And for millennials, many are joining the workforce at a time when jobs are hard to find by historical standards. They're also sporting crushing student loan debt and a severe distrust of the market. Any savings they do have is in cash and probably in the mattress. But with our current retirement system, we have little choice but to use the market to try to maximize our savings to reach a financially secure retirement.
I think that boomers did see the rug pulled out a little bit, and I don't think it's too late to make choices and get going. But again, you need to be more aggressive than you ever dreamed of.
I mean, many of us were expecting that we were going to retire soon. And I think we're not going to retire probably in the same way or as quickly as we had planned.
It used to be when people retired, I could do this, I can do it. It doesn't work like that anymore.
I'm not doing as good as I should. But I want my kids to do a lot better, and I want them to think about their retirement, because that's nothing I ever thought about.
These are big questions, and for the most part, our decision as a society has been to say, well, let's hope that individuals think about them.
But it's questionable just how much we are able to think about them. In 2013, the median household approaching retirement had $111,000 in 401k and IRA balances. Sounds like a lot? Well, what it means is less than $400 each month to supplement Social Security.
Americans are dramatically underprepared for retirement, and it's really a crisis. It's scary, it's problematic, and we have to do something about it.
When it comes to retirement, many Americans find themselves behind the 8 ball. How are we falling so far behind?
You know where you're going. All it takes is a little advice and a lot of planning.
There are lots of human irrationalities. One of those is the belief that people have in our ability to make decisions.
Behavioral economists like Dan Ariely study how we as humans actually make financial decisions, for better or for worse.
In style economics, we think about people as perfectly able. People can think about all the options, think about the long term, and always make the right decisions. The behavioral economics perspective is kind of sad. We're all fallible. We don't know how to make decisions. We're easily confused. It's a sad view of human nature, but the fact is it's a more accurate view of human nature.
Evolutionarily, our brains are wired to run from a bear or a lion, not planning far into the future.
Oh man, I love Northrop Grumman.
And it turns out stress and emotions cloud our decision-making abilities.
What the heck is going on down here?
And the more decisions we have to make, the worse we do.
Yes, OPEC did cut production by 1.5 million barrels per day.
Long term, many complicated decisions, stress, emotions. Sound familiar? With our current retirement system and our genetics, retirement planning is the perfect disaster.
It's pretty much game over for everyone else.
This is probably the toughest thing for people to do. It's about now versus later. And now versus later is something that we fail all the time, right? It's about overeating. Eating is fun now, not healthy later. Exercising, not so much fun now, good for later. And retirement is not just now versus later, it's now and very, very much later.
Not only are we unable to plan far into the future, humans are also very susceptible to temptations in the now.
We have all of these pulls at our attention right now, all of these things that grasp us and make us want to do the thing now, spend money on the new car, spend money on the slightly bigger house, on the nicer appliance, etc. And by the way, each of those things just feels more emotionally arousing, more exciting than the idea of putting money away for this long period of time in the future.
There's one more element that is very important to realize, which is that the environment that we're part of is actually fighting against us. Imagine that life is a battle on your wallet. Every store wants some of your wallet. Every coffee shop wants you to spend money. Every advertisement wants you to spend some money. And do they care about your retirement? No, they want you to spend now. The idea that people would be able to make the right decisions about retirement, for me, is equivalent to the idea that I will give you donuts and sausages and bacon and whatever you want every day and expect you to resist all of those temptations. It's just not going to work.
America resisted very few temptations in the early 2000s thanks to cheap credit and ballooning home values that we used as an ATM. Then came a major wake-up call, the 2008 market crash.
I mean, this is volatility we haven't seen, of course, since way before you and I were born.
So there's a great quote, "It's only when the tide goes out that we see who's been swimming naked." And I think that's really apparent with the financial crisis. Once interest rates went way down, once it became harder to borrow money, then it became more apparent who was in a good situation and who was not.
It was already difficult for our caveman brains to scrimp now for the distant future, but in today's economy, the battle in your wallet is often not for luxuries, but for necessities.
It's awfully tempting to say, well, you know, I need all my money today for the kids' dental bills or fixing the car or something along that line.
You know, finding that extra money to put out for the future when the needs are important today is really, really tough for many workers.
So even though it is very tempting not to save right now, that is probably one of the biggest mistakes that an individual can make.
Now we need to think about other approaches to help people save for retirement, because without it, devastation would come and it will be too late to fix anything.
Behavioral economists not only look at how we make decisions, but how can we be nudged into making better decisions?
And now when we say better decisions, it means better in terms of what someone says they would want to do, but don't often do. So they want to diet more. They want to save more. Well, why are people making these sorts of decisions? And is there any way that we can get in there and potentially change the decision-making context or change the decision maker themselves?
We can also think about how do we design the world for people like us, not for people who are hyper-rational.
The key to saving lies in understanding human behavior, our aversion to decision-making, and taking advantage of our natural inertia.
One of the things that we have learned is that when people are faced with a decision, especially if they think it's an important decision, and they don't know exactly what course of action to take, they do nothing. They say, well, you know, I'll decide on this on Thursday, and Thursday never happens.
One of the biggest problems with the 401k system is that people just aren't signing up. Maybe you start a new job and you're kind of not sure what the budget's going to be, and so you just put off making that decision, but then inertia takes hold and you just never get around to signing up.
Nearly a decade ago, David C. John and colleagues introduced policy to harness the power of our natural inertia, the automatic 401k. For employers who offered it, it meant employees would be automatically enrolled in a 401k plan. And the impact of the automatic 401k is striking. In the traditional 401ks, where you must choose to participate, 20% will sign up in the first year, and 3 years down the line, 65% are enrolled. With the automatic 401k, you're defaulted into the program. 90% are enrolled from the start, and 3 years down the line, participation goes up to 98%.
Unless you decide not to save, you're in the program. People actually participate. They recognize they need to save, they recognize they need the guidance, and they started to save earlier than they would have otherwise.
Employees are still offered the same options to save or not to save, but by framing the choice that you're saving unless you decide not to, participation rates increase from 65% to 98%. And with retirement saving, it is crucial to get people to the table and saving as early as possible.
The most important ingredient to growing your investments is time. So the earlier you start saving for retirement, the better.
The magic of compound interest, letting time do the work by investing as early as possible. Say a millennial puts away money for retirement starting at age 22 and quits contributing at age 30. Compare that to a Gen Xer who starts saving at 40 and keeps contributing to the age of 67. The younger saver earns $100,000 more by the age of 67, but has put in 2/3 less money. And imagine the added benefit if the millennial had kept contributing past age 30. The bottom line is, the earlier you start, the less you actually have to scrimp to meet your retirement goals. A 25-year-old can get away with contributing 10% per year, a 35-year-old 15%, and waiting until 45 years old will have you saving almost 30% of your salary.
We're not built to think about 40 and 50 years from now, and unless as a society we build structures that force that conversation and make it easy to act on that conversation, we're never going to solve this problem.
Automatic 401ks have gotten many Americans to the table and saving earlier than they would have on their own. But for half the American workforce, saving for retirement is still just out of reach.
So we still have a substantial proportion of the population who don't have the opportunity to save one way or the other, and that's a very serious problem.
As it stands, 75 million Americans lack access to a company-sponsored retirement savings program.
And the data are just completely clear. Less than 5% of people who lack a workplace plan go and open an IRA on their own. 5%. The majority are literally not saving.
Who makes up the 75 million? Self-employed, small business employees, and part-timers. 53 million Americans today work freelance or are self-employed. These folks are often on their own. But for small business employees, there have been some attempts to bring them to the table.
Offer every American access to an automatic IRA on the job, so they can save at work just like everybody in this chamber can.
The automatic IRA brings a low-cost, simple system for small businesses for whom 401ks may seem too expensive and complex. Both Senator McCain and then-Senator Obama included auto IRAs in their 2008 presidential campaigns, and each year, President Obama includes it in his federal budget.
It's a simple proposition, but it's a big deal.
Despite support, the automatic IRA is still just an attractive idea, languishing in the halls of Congress.
The federal government is the right place to do this, and for a while I think state governments were just kind of waiting for the federal government. At some point we got tired of waiting and we felt that it was time to act.
In early 2015, with State Senator Daniel Biss as its lead sponsor, Illinois became the first state to enact the automatic IRA into law. Illinois' Secure Choice enrolls small business employees by default into IRAs through payroll deduction, giving them access to an affordable retirement savings account and the behavioral benefits of automatic enrollment.
This is a bill that addresses problems in the long term, allows people now to start saving for later. And so that creates some urgency. We've got a crisis today, and any solution is going to literally, over the course of decades, roll out. And so that, when you're in that situation, you have to act fast.
And this is just the beginning. In 2015, 30 more states are developing their own versions of the automatic IRA. States are recognizing that it could be in their financial interest to address this problem head on.
They recognized that if they had a substantial population of people who are just retiring on Social Security or Social Security and not much more than that, they would have a lot of additional calls for taxpayer-funded expenses for health care, housing, libraries, home health care costs, things along that line.
And if we can fix our retirement security system so that people are independent, secure, living in dignity, and not reliant upon the state, that's not only the right thing to do for people, which it is, but it's also enormously beneficial to the state's bottom line.
In a very rare occurrence in today's political landscape, automatic IRAs are gaining traction in red and blue states alike.
So we have conservatives and liberals who come together and recognize that at least in this one tiny little area of public policy, we can actually get along and move towards practical solutions.
Some people will say, whoa, hold on, where's that money going out of my paycheck for? And will opt out, and that's fine. But the great majority of people will say, okay, now I'm saving for retirement. Good news.
But what of the 53 million freelancers and self-employed people shut out of the auto IRA world? That's 1/3 of the American workforce and growing. Gen X trudged the path in brushing off the traditional careers of their parents, either by choice or by necessity, and millennials are running with it. Today, almost 40% of millennials are freelance or self-employed.
And I think one of the things that we're all starting to feel and look at is that we're feeling insecure. We're seeing that all the risk is being borne by the workforce in terms of having these gig-like jobs, but we have to start to think about what are going to be the new ways that we can protect people so that they don't bear this kind of risk.
If workers with company-sponsored retirement plans have a difficult time overcoming their caveman brains and saving for retirement, what chance do freelancers have? With 40% of millennials working freelance and growing, this generational cohort is transforming the financial services industry through the best way they know how: technology.
I think millennials are very used to getting things done quickly.
And there's an app for that. Financial technology is making it easier for us to stay on top of our finances, from online banking apps to budgeting apps to even checking how your savings compares to your college graduating class.
And I think that is really reshaping financial services in a pretty big way. What you're seeing is, it starts with millennials, but then that kind of trend is going to Generation X and even into the baby boomers.
Saving funds in a 401k or IRA is just one challenge of many to attaining a financially secure retirement. Despite our savings shortfall, this DIY retirement system now has over $10 trillion in assets. And the financial industry, they're standing at the ready, marketing promises of helping you grow your nest egg.
We all know it's coming.
The retirement you want.
But choosing the right investments is often both complicated and risky.
Most of us have absolutely no idea. I mean, we hear about all kinds of things, but we also hear all kinds of dangers and fraud and things along that line.
When it comes down to it, we don't have a crystal ball. The main thing that works, though, is to diversify your risk.
There are one-size-fits-all funds out there known as target date funds, diversified and tailored to your age and risk tolerance. Some workers attempt to cobble together their own diversified retirement plan. But for many, diving into the turbulent waters of the stock market is stressful enough, and so they leave the investment decisions to a financial advisor.
When I was 22, when I first started, I was not saving. I worked for a company that had a pension plan, and I don't even know that I was aware of that. I was working for money. I didn't think of retirement at all.
But as happened to many Gen Xers and baby boomers, Tom's company rescinded the pension benefit and cashed out his pension in a lump sum.
So it went from, the company's kind of taking care of you, and you don't even have to think about it, to transition to, now I've really got to think about it. So I went over to my financial advisor and said, here's my money, where should it go? And he put it in managed funds.
All of my friends say, well, I'm in good shape. I have this guy that can help me, and my blood pressure starts to rise.
Investors face a very confusing array of individuals, and most of them, they sort of look alike, they sound alike. However, that's not the case at all. Investors need to understand those who are the product sellers, they are almost like your corner grocery butcher. Will have lots of opinions and will sell meat all day long, as opposed to your nutritionist who exists to give you advice on what's best for your health.
Product seller or advice giver? Who helps guide your investments? Advice givers are known as fiduciaries. By law, they're supposed to have your best financial interests at heart. For product sellers, the standard they're held to is called suitability, meaning the product seller can't make investments on your behalf that are wildly inappropriate given your financial profile. Otherwise, product sellers are free to pursue what is best for their bottom line rather than yours.
People are faced with the wild, wild west. They are faced with very unregulated professionals. And what that investment advisor wants to do is get your money in the accounts for which they earn a commission.
For Tom Bell, he started to notice that his nest egg just wasn't growing as he'd hoped or expected. True to his Gen X nature, self-reliant and skeptical of quote-unquote experts, Tom took the DIY approach and started researching on his own.
I started reading and I learned about fees and how much the managed funds were paying compared to how much index funds were paying, but not once was anything mentioned about the fees. And I didn't know to look at fees or not to look at fees. You know, I just thought mutual funds are mutual funds. This is his job to tell me what to do.
High fees don't necessarily lead to higher returns and can sometimes lead to the opposite. As the law currently stands, advisors are not required to disclose any conflicts of interest, meaning they can, and often do, steer you away from lower-cost, higher-earning funds to products that earn them a commission.
What we sometimes believe it to be true, that the more you pay, the more you get, the exact opposite is true when it comes to investing. The more you pay, the less you get.
These high fees are coming out of your nest egg, and over time, what could have been a large nest egg can be whittled down to a small one.
That small chunk that they're taking year after year after year is going to be how much by the time I retire. It's maddening is what it is.
And this bad advice, stemming from conflicts of interest, costs Americans an estimated $17 billion a year out of their retirement savings.
And there's no regulation that prevents them from steering you into accounts that serve their needs and their company's needs and doesn't serve your needs. There is nothing that prevents them from doing that.
If consumers ever needed protection for something through federal regulation, our retirement nest egg seems like a no-brainer.
The fees they're paying for services, as well as whether potential conflicts of interest exist with respect to investment services.
The Department of Labor gave it a shot, but lobbyists for the financial industry nearly killed the proposal until it got the attention of the White House.
You should have the peace of mind of knowing that the advice you're getting for investing those dollars is sound. And that's what this new rule would do. And for outstanding financial advisors out there, it levels the playing field so that they can do what they know is the right thing to do, putting their clients first.
While this isn't a law, there's movement on this issue, which advocates see as a great benefit to the American worker. Preparing for an economically secure retirement, with its many obstacles and pitfalls, can feel like you're living inside an arcade game. And if you can make it through, you'll arrive at retirement age with a big pot of gold. And for most Americans, this is the largest pot of gold they've ever seen.
I think we spent a lot of time from a policy side getting people to save and figuring out what's the way to make that happen. And we've spent almost no time thinking about how to help people when they actually need to withdraw the money.
So you retire with what may be more money than you ever had in your life. And people don't recognize that this becomes income and it has to last for however long your retirement lasts. We don't know how long we're going to have to stretch this money out.
Do you know your number?
The problem starts early on, setting your retirement goal as attaining a giant lump sum of liquid funds.
What we're finding out is that that's actually slightly problematic because people see a number like $200,000 and they think, that's a huge amount of money. That seems like that's enough to fund retirement. But when you start breaking that out in terms of how much it'll actually get us month by month in retirement, it doesn't look as good anymore.
Seeing your retirement account balance as a lump sum can lure people into dipping into that account before retirement. It might be to pay for important stuff such as education or health care, but sometimes it just gets frittered away.
I personally cashed out a 401k plan when I was 30. Like, hello. But you think, oh, I really needed it at that time. It wasn't much. So I didn't think there was any harm in cashing it out. I think that happens too frequently.
Chipping away at that nest egg, especially from a young age, can lead to compounded losses. While you're nickel and diming your retirement savings today, you're also losing out on all the growth the magic of compounding brings, cheating your future self out of thousands of dollars in retirement savings. At the time, these withdrawals can seem like small bits out of a giant lump sum of cash, but when explained in terms of affecting your monthly income in retirement, the difference is stark. Many financial institutions are starting to see the merit in reframing retirement account funds in this way and report both your balance and your balance as a stream of income.
This is just simple disclosure that could have a huge effect on people because it reminds them that this is the real purpose of retirement savings. It's not to have this monster lump sum, it's to have the security of the income towards the end of your life.
That's the goal for retirement savings after all, to maintain a stream of income to support you for the rest of your life. But it's also the next challenge.
It can be hard to predict how much you'll need to live in retirement.
And with people living longer today, it's even harder to know how long your money will have to last.
If you keep your portfolio in stocks and bonds, you're constantly guessing about your own longevity. How long am I going to live? And that's a question a lot of people have. And, it's a hard question to answer.
There's a lot of popularity around the old 4% adage. It assumes that your nest egg is continuing to grow at more than 4%. So if you keep your withdrawal percentage a little lower than the total return you're getting on the money still in your retirement account, you're going to be fine. You're not going to spend it down.
But getting a 4% return isn't as simple as it once was, and with today's anemic interest rates, all but requires you to keep funds in the stock market, exposing older people to risk they can't handle.
You gotta own stock.
The simple fact is that if you're going to run out of money, it's going to be towards the end of your life. And this is not the time to make incredibly complex financial decisions, especially given the fact that, by definition, you don't have a whole lot to deal with. Consider the group often called the silent generation, the cohort before the baby boomers. They enjoyed a pension, and with a pension, this group didn't have to make all these decisions, where to invest or how much to withdraw. They also didn't get handed $1 million. Instead, the silent generation lived out their golden years receiving a steady paycheck for the rest of their lives. Social Security functions the same way. You're paid a guaranteed benefit for the rest of your life. So it would stand to reason that the ideal would be to apply the pension paycheck model to the system most prevalent for today's retirement, 401ks and IRAs. But it requires yet another financial industry product, annuities.
An annuity you buy for yourself as retirement approaches or earlier in your retirement is like an instant pension plan for yourself.
In its simplest form, an annuity is an insurance product. You take a certain amount of money, give it to the insurance company, and the insurance company gives you a paycheck every month for as long as you live. The funds are out of the stock market, and unlike the traditional 4% withdrawal, your savings are safe from fluctuations in the market.
You don't have to check your, investments looking, at the market every day, like how much am I going to be able to afford to take out so that I don't run out of money, and so if the market's down, it causes a lot of anxiety. If you buy the annuity, that problem is solved for you.
In a world of economic instability and no guarantees, here's what you can count on.
Still, consumers remain skeptical of annuities, a financial product that can seem frustratingly complex and one that requires a long commitment.
I think people are afraid to lock up money. They think they don't have enough in the first place.
If I have $100,000 at current rate, I'll get roughly $5,500, maybe $6,000 a year. So it's $500 a month. And people look at this and they say, $100,000, $500 a month. What happens if I walk in front of a bus tomorrow? Is it gone?
Well, what if you live to be 90 and you don't want your kids to have to pay for you? So there's lots of good reasons to do it, but people don't do it as much as they should.
Annuities are a controversial subject, and like every investment vehicle, they have their pros and cons. You never annuitize all of your investment income for retirement, but you want to use that annuity for guaranteed income to supplement Social Security. Look at how much you're going to need to live on, your basic household budget. How much is going to come from reliable annuity sources like Social Security, and then buy an annuity that will give you monthly income that fills that gap.
And with that, you've created your own pension, designed as a paycheck for the rest of your life, insulated from the fluctuations of the stock market.
And let's face it, we're going to have more economic crashes in the future. They're a fact of life, just like hurricanes. So doing something like this would make a lot more sense than the current system of just sort of hoping that things will work out.
For many, particularly baby boomers, it's simply too late. They've saved what they've saved, it's not enough, and they have little time to make it up. So what else can we do?
Social Security is today and always has been a rob Peter to pay Paul principle.
It is a Ponzi scheme.
We are headed for a fiscal cliff here.
Every one of those programs is going broke.
I've never seen an area where there's been more misinformation and misunderstanding than Social Security.
Social Security is not going away. It's here now. It's going to be here for the millennials 30 years from now. It's not going away.
But with pensions all but faded away, Social Security and its guaranteed lifetime benefit plays an important role for most retirees. But it's facing a long-term financing problem, and as most Americans rely on that benefit, it needs to be shored up.
If we do nothing today, we can pay full benefits as promised through 2033, at which point the benefits would have to be cut by 25%. This is the most important component of retirement income for most people. So I think we need to maintain current benefit levels, which means we need additional financing.
Social Security was not meant to fund a 20 or 25-year retirement, so no wonder the system is in financial straits. But fixing the financial stresses of Social Security are really very, very easy. If you locked 15 congressmen in a room for an hour, locked the door, lots of coffee, no bathroom break, they would come up with a financial fix for Social Security in about 45 minutes. Everybody knows what would do it. It is simply a matter of political will.
One way to get more money in is just to raise the tax rate.
By raising the Social Security tax 1.5% on both the employer and employee's side, full benefits can be paid for the next 75 years.
You could also increase the cap on the earnings subject to taxation.
Right now, the Social Security tax is applied to incomes up to about $118,500. Any income above that is simply not taxed for Social Security.
They're not contributing to the system. You would jack up the wage base to which the Social Security FICA tax applies. It's solvent immediately.
So, Social Security can be fixed for a price if there is the political will. Those nearing retirement also may have the chance to get more out of this government-mandated lifetime benefit. Most of us know that at age 62 we can claim Social Security, but did you know that the longer you wait, the higher the benefit?
The numbers are astounding. If you take it at age 70 instead of at 62, monthly benefits are 76% higher.
People who start their benefits too early when they're in good health, they're reasonably well off, and they could wait until 66 or 70, are leaving higher lifetime benefits that they could get by waiting for a few years past age 62. And I hope everybody looks into this and finds out more about it, because this is one of the most important retirement decisions anybody can make, and a lot of people are not getting it right.
And for many, delaying collecting Social Security means delaying retirement.
I think what has happened in terms of looking at retirement today, particularly for boomers, is that, you know, it used to be you had Social Security, you had your own personal savings, and maybe you had a pension or whatever. Now, work is part of your retirement. It is a working retirement.
Many boomers want to keep working, but may be ready to ditch the 40-hour grind. Phased retirement programs allow workers to gradually scale back hours heading into full retirement, making it easier for many to work longer. Federal employees now have this benefit, and several private companies are following suit. This allows companies to hold on to decades of institutional knowledge, while the phased retiree can scale back hours but keep steady income and health benefits.
I've been working at Herman Miller for 33 years. It can be quite a physically demanding job. You're constantly on the move. We can walk 20,000+ steps a day.
Herman Miller, the legendary furniture company, began to offer a phased retirement program 3 years ago. Sally Meyer, a divorced mother of 6, has been able to scale back to 20 hours per week.
As you get older, you kind of get a little bit tired. It's kind of nice that I don't have to work a full week.
Herman Miller, however, may be alone among companies to offer a phased retirement program to employees on the manufacturing floor.
If I was to retire right now, I would be somewhat concerned, but being able to continue working for a few more years, I can postpone collecting my Social Security, so that will be much better. Plus, I can add on a little more to my 401k, and then I'll be in a real good position to fully retire.
But for many still, working longer in their career is simply not an option. Alfreda Diggs worked for 39 years in the juvenile justice system. At 61, she got hurt on the job, an injury that forced her to retire early.
And at first I thought, well, okay, I'll get my retirement money, I'll be fine. Don't work like that. I started living off of my retirement money. In 2 years, I didn't have a dime. I was broke.
At age 63, despite her injuries, Alfreda looked for a job, and like many older adults, she had a difficult time getting back into the workforce.
I even went to the employment office, and I put an application online. I never heard back from them. At that point, I didn't know what I was going to do.
While at a food bank, Alfreda saw a flyer for the Senior Community Service Employment Program, CSEP, a job training program for older adults offered by state agencies and nonprofits. In Alfreda's case, at the Detroit Area Agency on Aging.
So when I came down here and applied, about a month later, I got a phone call. And then within the next week or so, I was working.
Through the CSEP program, Alfreda took computer training classes and eventually signed up to become a certified home health care aide through the Red Cross.
The money that I make now supplements my Social Security. And I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm surviving. I don't have to go to the food pantry anymore. And I thank God for that. Don't worry about it. I'll put it with my stuff, okay? Come on. All right. I want to keep working as long as I can. And I plan to start saving some more money. I know I'm not going to be able to save the kind of money that I saved, but still put a little money aside.
But what if you can't keep working or have simply had enough? Here is another option. For most Americans, particularly middle-income people, the greatest source of accumulating wealth is the home they own.
I think the house is a major retirement asset. The problem is, to date, people haven't used it. Basically, they keep hold of their house. I think that it provides some security in case something goes wrong later in life. And I think implicitly they also want to leave it to their kids.
But with today's retirement savings shortfall, many will have to start looking at tapping home equity to bridge the gap in retirement savings. We've all heard of downsizing, but there's another option: reverse mortgages.
You deserve to enjoy life again with a reverse mortgage.
These had a bad reputation after some people were swindled, but with new government protections, reverse mortgages are back.
I believe this is going to be a core part of how we address the retirement problem. First, the house is the biggest asset that a typical American family has at retirement. And it's something that can move the needle, therefore, in helping people. So you have to look for big things. That's one reason that reverse mortgage looks interesting.
Here's how a reverse mortgage works. Your home has equity, right? Well, you can tap into that equity with a monthly installment at a fixed rate, like a Social Security check. Or you can take a lump sum or get a line of credit in a time of need, tapping into your home in order to stay at home for the rest of your life.
Used sensibly, it makes a lot of sense. Yes, it can be abused. Yes, it has been abused. But properly regulated and monitored, they have their role in making retirement more comfortable for somebody who does own a home with substantial equity.
But staying at home alone is not the goal for some.
I have no choices but to age. And I had watched both of my parents pass away in nursing homes. And as a divorced and single woman with no children, I thought, what will happen to me?
Mary Ann Kilkenny was looking for ways to downsize her home and an alternative to aging alone.
Housing is probably one of the hugest costs anybody outlays. And to say, how can I take that same amount of retirement money and utilize it?
Some boomers were drawn to communal living in the 1960s, and now the arrangement looks attractive again as people enter retirement.
I think that shared housing, and looking at how far our money in retirement goes, is most definitely a solution. And the other piece of it is, I feel much safer here than I did when I lived, and it wasn't like it was a bad neighborhood, but I also lived by myself.
The benefits of shared housing go beyond financial.
People are checking in to see how you're doing. I mean, there's a lot to be said for, somebody saying, how's your day? Something as simplistic as that. One of the things about aging is that we oftentimes would like assistance in many of the things that we used to do in a relatively easy way. Whether it's shoveling snow, raking the leaves, being able to read something from a package, where does that assistance come from is the question.
We have my eyes, it's okay.
Yes, all right, we'll take your eyes.
For women like Mary Ann, that assistance can come from living in a shared house. With 1 in 3 baby boomers single, aging in community is a growing trend that many will be looking towards.
Oh, they're huge. Uh-huh. The fact that we talk about shared living as a new thing, I find kind of humorous in that it isn't really a new thing. It's how families lived for centuries, and now we're saying it's something new. It's just we're with a chosen family.
Boomer, Gen Xer, Millennial.
Thank you all.
Maybe it all begins by accepting that one day we will be 65.
It's such a weird thing, right? Because it is you still, right? It's some version of you, like that you will eventually, whose skin you will eventually step into. It's a sort of a dependent, and it's up to us now to make sacrifices so that they can be taken care of, so that they can live potentially a better life, or worse, depending on what we do right now. We know that there are all these times where we make sacrifices for other people, right? So we make sacrifices for our children, for our spouses, and for our aging parents. And what my colleagues and I have tried to suggest is that our future selves should be considered along similar dimensions to those people.
Hal's research has shown that we don't actually feel emotionally connected to our future self. It's too abstract, and so we don't think of our future selves as someone to take care of. But his research has also looked at ways to foster more emotional connection to our future selves.
We've actually shown people age-progressed images of themselves. Now, it is emotional. So we've actually found that seeing these age-progressed images of ourselves does make us feel more emotionally connected to those distant selves. But you also see, sort of from an anecdotal perspective, when I've shown these images to our research participants, they say things like, "Oh my God, that looks like my grandmother," or "That looks like my grandfather." It does seem to be sort of an emotional experience for people as they see these images. So the bottom line is that if they are emotionally connected to us, then we'll be more motivated to make sacrifices today to ensure their later well-being.
Years ago, maybe our grandparents' era, 65-year-olds generally looked old, thought old, acted old. They were old. Not today, you know. I mean, the average age of the Rolling Stones is in the 70s. You know, they're older than our Supreme Court.
True to their advertised nature, baby boomers are blazing a trail for the generations behind them, showing both what do-it-yourself retirement can look like and exposing the fractures in the system along the way.
Baby boomers are a generation of firsts. You know, as women, we went to work first. The first huge group of people to look at retirement and say, do I have enough money? We did lots of things, not all of which everybody was positive about, but we're the first, we're on the forefront of really making some significant changes.
They're thinking of it as a time where they have more freedom, but it's not freedom necessarily to sit on the beach and read a book. It's freedom to be involved in their community. It's freedom to start a company. It's freedom to work at a part-time job that they've always thought about. It's freedom to pursue their hobbies and interests that they've never had time for.
This is where we all want to get, an economically secure retirement with the freedom to live out whatever our own vision of retirement is.
I think the word retirement won't be this big wall that, you know, with you jump over it and, you know, you're done and people don't ever see you anymore and you're off in retirement land.
It's really been an opportunity for people to sort of shift and say, you know, what is it that I'd really like to be doing? And particularly for boomers, people in their, you know, late 50s, 60s, it's a time where you want to say, you know, what's life all about? What is it that's going to bring meaning to my life? At 60, you can conceivably be doing something completely different for the next 15 years. You can start over in a new career.
People 60 years old are the new middle age. And I plan to be here until I'm an old age, so I do what I need to do. Even if I retired, I would still volunteer to help a senior. Or if I can help some young people, I would do that.
Successful picture of retirement for me. No mortgage, no debt. I've got 3 kids. Right now one lives in Minneapolis. I don't know where the next 2 are going to live. So I want to be able to travel from city to city without a lot of worries of only being able to make maybe 1 trip a year to see each one of them.
I don't plan on being bored. I just want to keep my lifestyle the way it is now. And with the annuities that I have, it will cover what my paychecks have been. Of course, there won't be any increases for raises or anything, but that's what, I guess what my Social Security will be.
The last 30 years of this DIY retirement experiment have been a rough ride, but understanding our behavioral economics and advancing public policy are helping us get there.
We are seeing this as a worldwide phenomenon. We are seeing literally in every continent in the world governments recognizing that people are living longer and that they need to deal with this issue.
After a lifetime of hard work, you should be able to retire with dignity and a sense of security.
We have a big task ahead of us to do this right, and it has to be done right. I'm cautiously optimistic in the sense that this is not a science problem. We know how to solve it. It's an engineering problem. And that's always good, knowing that you can solve it.
65 may be some blurry destination in the distance, or something approaching in sharper focus quite soon. But through planning, luck, or both, many of us can get there to enjoy our own vision of a successful retirement.
When I'm 65 is made possible by the nonprofit Investor Protection Trust and the Investor Protection Institute, with contributions from the Alabama Securities Commission, the Iowa Insurance Division, the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, and the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities. Since 1993, the Investor Protection Trust has worked with the states to provide the objective investor education needed by all Americans to make informed investment decisions.